On the night of July 11, 2026, Conor McGregor walked into the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas for the first time in 5 years. It was the same build that he was carried out of back in 2021, where he had broken his leg in 2 different places. And now, at 37 years old, he was heading the biggest gate in UFC at $25 million against the man he had beaten 13 years earlier. The fight lasted 69 seconds. He sprinted across the canvas, threw a flying kick at Max Holloway, and his knee nearly gave out on impact. He slipped, he stumbled, and to Holloway's credit, he tried to wave off the fight before the referee called off the fight for good. The arena booed as the most famous mixed martial arts fighter limped out of the cage that night. But this story isn't about the fight. It's about the 5 years that came before it. 5 years in which McGregor never threw a punch competitively, but he was in and out of courtrooms between 2 different continents. 5 years in which a civil jury found that McGregor abused of a woman, in which he lost every appeal available to him, in which sponsors walked away, and even his own political leaders declared that he did not speak for Ireland. And through all of it, one organization never wavered. The UFC kept his name on headlines, kept his return date on the calendar, and ultimately built the biggest stage they had ever built just for him. So how did that happen? A fighter who hasn't fought in half a decade, who is carrying the heaviest legal baggage in the history of the sport, and is headlining the flagship event. To answer that, we have to start from the beginning. He arrived in 2013 as a plumber's apprentice from Crumlin, a working-class suburb in Dublin, collecting his welfare checks the same week he made his debut. And within 3 years, he was the first UFC fighter to hold 2 championship belts simultaneously. And by 2017, he had crossed over to boxing to face Floyd Mayweather in one of the richest staged events ever. And from that point on, his rise is a bit difficult to understand. Before the UFC's broadcast deal with Paramount began in 2026, McGregor's fights accounted for 8 out of the 10 highest selling pay-per-views in the promotion's history. In 2021, he was the highest paid athlete, being paid more than basketball stars, footballers, and all boxers. He didn't just sell fights, he changed what a fighter's worth could be. And in doing so, he became something that promotions had never managed before, an asset too valuable to discipline. And that matters because the warning signs arrived early, and they arrived in the public. In April of 2018 in Brooklyn, New York, after a UFC media day, McGregor and his entourage attacked a bus carrying rival fighters, and McGregor threw a metal hand truck through the window, injuring one of the fighters. He was arrested, charged, and eventually pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct, walking away with community service and anger management classes. Now pay attention to what the UFC did next, because this really shows how this relationship works. Within 6 months, the footage was being used as promotional material for the fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov, a fight that ended in McGregor's beatdown and both camps brawling in and around the cage in one of the most ugliest scenes we've seen in the sport. Did anyone face any lasting consequences? Not really. The event became one of the best-selling pay-per-views of all time. The pattern continued. In April of 2019, security cameras in a Dublin pub captured McGregor punching an older man in the head just for refusing a glass of his whiskey brand. He pleaded guilty to assault and was fined €1,000, something that he could just easily earn just in the course of me saying the sentence. A month earlier, in Miami, he was arrested for destroying the phone of a fan who was photographing him outside of a hotel. The criminal charges were dropped once the man stopped cooperating, and the civil claim was resolved quietly. In 2020, prosecutors of Corsica, France, opened an investigation of allegations of attempted sexual assault, an investigation that was later closed without any charges. Individually, each incident was survivable, and each time, the machine around McGregor was absorbing the damage. He apologized when apologies were useful, he paid when payments made things disappear, and the UFC scheduled his next fight. But one case would prove impossible to disappear because the woman at the center of it refused to let it happen. In December of 2018, a hairdresser named Nikita Han spent a night at a penthouse suite at the Beacon Hotel in South Dublin with Conor McGregor. What happened in that room would take 6 years to reach a verdict. Han alleged that McGregor brutally raped and battered her. McGregor maintained that the interaction was purely consensual. Irish prosecutors examined the case and declined to bring charges forward, citing that there was insufficient evidence for a likely conviction. That could have been the end of it. Instead, Han did something extraordinarily rare. She sued him personally in an open civil court under her name, knowing she would face one of the wealthiest and most aggressive legal operations in Irish sport. In November of 2024, in one of the most closely watched trials in Irish history, a high court jury found McGregor civilly liable for assault and concluded that Nikita Han was in that hotel room. She was awarded just under 249,000 euros in damages, and McGregor was ordered to pay 1.3 million euros in her legal costs. During the investigation, the jury found that McGregor answered no comment to police questions around 100 times. But to be fair, it's important to be precise here. This was a civil finding decided on the balance of probabilities, and McGregor has never been criminally charged or convicted in relation to this case. He has continued to deny any wrongdoing, most recently telling reporters in this month's Fight Week, quote, "I am an innocent man." But what followed the verdict arguably damaged him more than the verdict itself. And this is where the story takes its strangest turn. McGregor appealed, and part of the appeal came from supposed fresh evidence that came from Han's supposed neighbors, who alleged that they had seen her then partner attack her around the time of the incident. On the eve of the hearing, his legal team withdrew the evidence which they were presenting, and which the court described as a mysterious circumstance. The presiding judge said the abandonment can only be read as an acknowledgement that Ms. Han was correct, awarding her cost on the highest available basis to the court, and referred the matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions to open an investigation to possible perjury. The evidence meant to rescue his appeal ended up under criminal investigation itself. In July of 2025, the Court of Appeal dismissed McGregor's appeals on every single basis. In December of 2025, Ireland's Supreme Court refused to hear the case at all, closing the final legal door. Han has since filed a new action against McGregor and the couple behind the withdrawn evidence, alleging malicious abuse of the court process, and he faces a separate civil lawsuit filed in Florida in January 2025. The commercial world reacted the way commercial worlds do, with brands distancing themselves and businesses boycotting his products long after the headlines faded. With sponsors gone, the court's exhausted, and no fight on the horizon, what does a man like McGregor do next? He runs for president. While the courts worked, McGregor was busy reinventing himself as something new entirely. Beginning around the Dublin riots in late 2023, he emerged as one of the most anti-immigration voices in Irish public life. And by March of 2025, he was standing in the White House on St. Patrick's Day as a guest invited by the Trump administration, prompting Ireland's political leadership to issue an almost unprecedented rebuke, stating flatly that McGregor does not speak for Ireland. He then announced that he would run for Irish presidency. The bid lasted until September 2025, when he withdrew before ever securing a nomination, blaming rules that would require candidates to win the backing of 20 parliament members or 4 local councils, rules he described as a straitjacket preventing a true democratic election. And here's a detail worth noticing. His withdrawal came days after he told reporters he would fight at the UFC's next planned White House event. The presidential campaign ended, and the comeback campaign started almost immediately, as he re-entered the drug testing pool and began posting videos of his training. Even at Fight Week this month, his political persona remained intact, as he told the assembled press, "I'm not here to win anyone back, I'm here to represent my country. What is taking place in Ireland is the saddest story in the West. Not the several famines they had and the revolutions they had against the UK. Not that, just because it's sad because they didn't want him as president." Which brings us finally to the institution that made all of this possible. Let's try a thought experiment. Picture any major league sport, and picture its single most famous athlete, or the GOAT, pleading guilty to assault, being found civilly liable by a jury, losing every appeal, having his own evidence being investigated for perjury, and going 5 years without competing. In almost any other institution, that career is done for. In the UFC, that athlete headlines International Fight Week, so what's the difference? The explanation begins with the fact that the UFC is not a league at all. It's a privately owned promotion, now owned by TKO Group, with no players union, no independent commissioner, and no collective moral standard besides what the executives decide is good for business. When the Nikita Nikita Hand verdict landed in November 2024, UFC president Dana White gave no indication that this would affect Conor McGregor's career. And in the months that followed, White went further by publicly praising McGregor and favorably contrasting him to other fighters. And when you look at the incentives, silence starts to explain itself. The UFC signed a multi-billion-dollar broadcast deal with Paramount that began in 2026, a deal built on delivering spectacle on a scale, and no one alive delivers spectacle like Conor McGregor. The promotion placed his return at the top of the flagship International's Fight Week card, a booking that analysts illustrates how much the promotion values him, even as critics openly question whether he deserved the spotlight. The bet paid off before he ever threw a punch. Standing before reporters, Dana White celebrated what he called the Conor McGregor effect, boasting the previous $22 million gate at the Sphere had been shattered by the $25 million gate of McGregor's return. There's also a political layer that's hard to ignore. Dana White is one of the most prominent allies of President Trump in American sports. McGregor was welcomed to the White House while his government condemned him. And the UFC has spent the past year planning an event on White House grounds that McGregor has publicly claimed as his own. Whether the alignment protects him or simply keeps him relevant is open to interpretation. But either way, the calculation from the promotion side has been consistent for years, that McGregor will draw eyes and make money without affecting the brand. And so far, judging based off ticket sales, that calculation has held. But could he still actually fight? That was one question no press conference could answer. "5 years is an eternity in this sport, or any sport for that matter. Consider one statistic that puts this in perspective. Alex Pereira, a 2-division champion and one of the biggest UFC names, fought his entire 13-fight UFC career since the last time Conor stepped into the octagon. Meanwhile, the opponent waiting for him was no longer the raw 21-year-old that he outpointed in 2013. Max Holloway has spent those years becoming arguably the best featherweight fighter of all time and the reigning BMF champion. And for the first time in over a decade, oddmakers listed McGregor as the underdog. The comeback lasted 69 seconds. McGregor's knee buckled in the opening exchange, a strange echo of the injury he suffered against the same opponent 13 years earlier, and the record-paying crowd booed the stoppage. Holloway, standing in the cage moments later, told the arena that McGregor wanted to keep fighting even on the injured leg, and then announced there would be a third fight between them. So where does this leave things? McGregor is 37, coming off another serious leg injury, and has not won a single fight since 2016. Nikita Hand's verdict stands, upheld every level of the Irish courts, and her new lawsuit, along with the federal case held in Florida. It means his courtroom schedule remains fuller than his fight schedule. And yet, the trilogy is being discussed. The White House card still looms on the calendar, and the largest gate in UFC history now has his name attached to it. Whether you see a promotion standing loyally by the star built it, or a business that simply has decided that numbers matter more than verdicts, probably depends where you were sitting at Saturday night. But those 69 seconds, let me know what you guys think about that in the comments.